The morning began like any other, yet something in Emma's heart felt different. A quiet ache that lingered as she stood by the kitchen window, staring at the sunrise. Today wasn't just another day. It was their 10th wedding anniversary. 10 years of laughter, struggle, and shared dreams. She had woken early, hoping to surprise Daniel with breakfast, his favorite pancakes with strawberries and honey. The aroma filled the kitchen, and she smiled softly as she set the table with care. But the smile faded when she heard the front door open and close. Daniel's hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. He appeared in his usual rush, suit crisp, tie loose around his neck, phone in hand. "Morning," he said absently, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. "You're leaving already?" she asked, trying to hide her disappointment. "Big meeting," he replied without looking up. "I'll be home late." Emma's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. "Do you remember what day it is?" she asked quietly. He paused for a moment, glanced at his watch, then gave her a puzzled smile. "Thursday?" Her heart sank. She forced a nod, pretending not to care. "Yes, Thursday." He was gone before she could say another word. The sound of the car engine faded into the morning, leaving her alone with the untouched breakfast. The candles she had planned to light for dinner still sat in their box on the counter. All day, she tried to keep busy, folding laundry, watering plants, even rewatching old wedding videos. Daniel's younger, carefree smile on the screen made her chest tighten. She remembered how he once promised, "No matter what, I'll never let a day go by without reminding you how much I love you." But now, years later, that promise felt like a ghost. When evening came, she dressed in the soft blue dress he once adored, setting the dinner table for two. The house glowed warmly under candlelight, and a small silver box sat beside her plate, a bracelet she had bought for him, engraved, "Forever Us." Hours passed. Midnight came and went. The food grew cold, the candles burned out, and still, Daniel didn't come home. When he finally arrived past 2, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers, Emma didn't ask where he'd been. She only turned away in silence, her heart quietly breaking in the dark. The morning after their forgotten anniversary, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Daniel sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through his phone, while Emma moved quietly around the kitchen, avoiding his eyes. Every sound, the clink of the spoon, the hum of the refrigerator, seemed to echo in the space between them. He spoke first, his voice casual. "You didn't sleep well last night?" She didn't look up. "I waited for you. You came home late." Daniel hesitated, his fingers pausing mid-scroll. "Yeah." The meeting ran over. "The meeting," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "I see." She didn't argue, didn't accuse. She simply placed his coffee on the table and left the room, leaving him alone with the guilt he tried not to feel. Later that day, Emma couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was deeply wrong. She remembered the perfume she'd smelled on him, the unfamiliar scent that didn't belong in their home. It wasn't just her imagination anymore. Her instincts screamed the truth she was too afraid to confront. At noon, she decided to go to Daniel's office, convincing herself it was only to bring him lunch, just like old times. She packed his favorite meal, her hands trembling slightly as she tied the ribbon on the lunchbox. When she reached the office, she saw him through the glass wall of his corner room. He wasn't alone. A young woman, slim, elegant, laughing softly, stood beside him. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder as they looked at something on his computer screen. Daniel's smile was genuine, relaxed in a way it hadn't been at home for months. Emma's heart cracked quietly. She didn't storm in. She didn't shout. Instead, she placed the lunch on the receptionist's desk and whispered, "Please give this to Mr. Daniel." Her voice barely held steady as she walked out, tears burning her eyes. That evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. His expression was unreadable as he asked, "You were at my office today, weren't you?" Emma looked up, her face calm but pale. "Yes," she said softly. "I saw you with her." Daniel's shoulders tensed. "Emma, she's just a coworker. Nothing's going on." Emma stared at him, her voice breaking. "Then why does it feel like I've already lost you?" For the first time in a long while, Daniel couldn't find an answer. The silence that followed spoke louder than any denial ever could. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Emma and Daniel moved around each other like strangers sharing the same roof. The air was thick with unspoken words, and every glance carried a quiet ache. Daniel tried, he really did. He brought home flowers, cooked her favorite meals, even sent small text messages during work hours like he used to. But Emma's eyes no longer lit up at his gestures. She had built a wall around her heart, one that words and gifts couldn't easily break. One evening, a storm rolled in. The rain came hard and steady, tapping against the windows like an old memory knocking on the door. The power flickered and went out, leaving the house bathed in darkness. Emma, sitting alone in the kitchen, lit a single candle. The soft glow reflected in her eyes as she stared out at the rain. Daniel entered quietly, his silhouette framed by the lightning that flashed outside. "Do you remember our first storm together?" he asked gently. Emma turned slightly. "When the roof leaked and we had to catch the water with a bucket?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, you said it felt like an adventure." A small, reluctant smile tugged at her lips. "It was back when everything felt like one." He took a step closer. "Emma, I know I've hurt you. I can't change what happened, but I can be better. I want to be better." His voice cracked with sincerity. Her eyes softened, though her voice remained guarded. "You say that now, Daniel? But when everything felt empty, you found comfort somewhere else instead of coming to me." He nodded slowly, accepting her pain instead of defending himself. "You're right. I stopped seeing you. I stopped listening. But I never stopped loving you. I was just lost." The thunder rumbled above them, but neither moved. Finally, he reached out his hand, hesitantly. "Can we start again? Not as who we were, but as who we want to be?" Emma looked at his hand, trembling slightly before placing hers in his. The warmth of his touch stirred something deep inside her, a fragile hope she thought had died. They stood in the flickering candlelight, holding each other as the storm raged outside. And for the first time in months, the silence between them didn't feel like distance. It felt like healing. The storm that night marked the beginning of quiet change. It didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't easy. But slowly, through small gestures and long talks, Emma and Daniel began to rediscover each other. The next morning, Daniel suggested something unexpected: couples therapy. Emma hesitated at first. Pride and pain still clung to her heart. Yet, she agreed, not because she had fully forgiven him, but because she still wanted to try. Weeks passed, and they learned to speak honestly again. Their therapy sessions were raw and uncomfortable at times. Daniel confessed how he had drifted, how work had consumed him, and how loneliness had blinded him to her quiet cries for attention. Emma, in turn, admitted how she had shut him out emotionally long before the distance began. For the first time in years, they weren't blaming. They were understanding. At home, the warmth slowly returned. They started having dinner together without the weight of silence. They laughed again, small, hesitant laughs at first, then real, deep ones. Daniel began leaving work earlier, and Emma found herself waiting for him not with suspicion, but with calm anticipation. One Saturday morning, Emma awoke to the smell of coffee. Daniel was in the kitchen, humming an old tune as he flipped pancakes, her favorite. When she entered, he turned with a smile that reached his eyes. 10 years late, but I figured it's never too late to start over," he said, sliding a small envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten note. "For all the moments I made you feel invisible, I promise to see you now, every day." Attached was a photograph, one from years ago, of them standing in the rain, laughing, soaked to the skin. Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but they were tears of release, not sorrow. She walked to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. "You really are trying," she whispered. "I'm not just trying," he murmured against her hair. "I'm learning." That evening, they took a walk through the park where they had their first date. The sunset painted the sky gold, and Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "After everything," he said softly, "I think we finally found our way back." Emma smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "No," she whispered. "We've found something even better. Each other. Again." And for the first time in a long time, love felt real, steady, and new.